So we're back after a week away, tanned, rested, and ready. Guys, did you enjoy your little break from the KrakCast?
Or sipping pina coladas on the beach in the rain.
Yeah. Love feeling the sand between my toes. Dave is still there, though, buried with the fishes.
Dave needs another week off, which is fine. But thanks for patiently waiting for us to return. I'm sure millions of
all
you,
those
millions
letters
of
kind
you
of
were
begging us to kind of, what has happened, guys?
Yeah, exactly. Wondering when we were going to come back. Well, we are back with the news. We got to start with a familiar subject, unfortunately, because it's back in the news for bad reasons. Dr. Mike, the corona statistics are all going the wrong way, like really fast. Suddenly, what we thought was kind of like slowly, going down on the graph is coming back up with a vengeance. And people are worried about a second wave and what's going to happen now. What's your take on all this?
Well,
as a doctor,
we would have to ask ourselves, in Poland, do we even have a first wave? Considering the amount of cases and deaths. I mean, in Poland right now, we're about 1,800, not even, deaths in the last 4 months.
1,800 too many, by the way.
Yes, people dying bad.
Do you know, sorry to put you on the spot here, but do you know how many active cases right now registered in Poland?
Don't know how many active cases, but I know that the last few days it's been somewhere near about 800 cases per day.
Yeah, we're setting a new record every day, the bad kind of record, yeah.
So,
but it's worth pointing out that actually the aggregated number of deaths over this period is less than the median over the last kind of like 15 or so years for this country, kind of regardless of what the cause of death is. But
well, when you're looking at the death rate in Poland, generally speaking, it hasn't twitched either way. So take that as you will. But the truth is that when it comes to cases of coronavirus, it has increased in the last few days. And the government has decided to take extra steps to...
Oh, very good. I like what you did there.
Oh, my throat. To counter that, in Krakow, maybe not necessarily, but in other counties and municipalities, they decided to limit the amount of people that can go to public parties from 150 to 50. They're shutting down cinemas. They're saying that people have to start wearing masks in public spaces. You have this in Nowa Sącz and other regions near Małopolska.
Wait, did you say something about cinemas? I thought they reopened 2 weeks ago. We went to one, actually.
Yes, we did. We saw Empire Strikes Back. Blew my mind.
So wait, did I miss something? Are they closing again?
Not in Krakow, fortunately, but in these other regions, these other municipalities have been rated red. You will not be allowed to go to
zones.
Exactly, the hot zones.
Newsflash, guys, The Empire Strikes Back was released in, 1980, 81?
We had a time machine.
Okay.
Yes.
So, there is kind of a shortage of new films to actually go and see in the cinema.
They have to be creative. Yeah, they're getting some old, like really old school stuff to get people interested.
I'd love to see Back to the Future on the screen.
Good. A couple of related announcements to the corona situation. One, a very highly anticipated announcement from the government regarding kids going back to school on September 1st. The government announced this week that they do expect everything to return as normal on September 1st. Still a lot of questions to be answered about will the teachers agree to go back? Will the administrative staff agree to go back? Will the parents agree to send their kids? And so we'll see what it really looks like once we get to September 1st. The kids have been out of school for going on 9 months now. A lot of parents are ready to definitely need their kids to go back for many reasons. For childcare reasons, for just socialization reasons, for educational reasons, obviously. So we're 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks away from that. We'll see how it goes. But this is taken to be a major indicator of the government's kind of attitude going forward. If they give the green light for schools to reopen, that's kind of a larger comment on what the government expects to be dealing with over the coming months, yeah?
No, I agree with that. I mean, and I also think that the government was maybe overreacting back in March and April, but at that time, they didn't really know.
When it comes to canceling school?
To come to canceling school.
Yeah, we all yes, definitely overreaction, but again,
they didn't know at that point. Nobody knew how serious the situation was, so they decided to play it safe, abundance of caution. But now, with more data, more information, they're realizing it's not so bad. So they want to reopen the schools, but they understand that because of the panic that was induced earlier, that people might not be so comfortable going back to school or sending back their kids to school. But they're trying to tell people, like, no, it's not going to be so bad. So they are sending kids back to school. The question is, will there be these, limitations on teachers working behind like plastic screens and masks, etc.
Well, that's what I kind of found interesting was the fact that there were no conditions attached to the announcement. It was basically September 1st, we're going back as normal. Yeah, some issues to be answered when it comes to, is everybody going to participate? But a lot of people were including myself, were expecting a condition to be attached, something like, half the kids will go in the morning, half the kids will go in the afternoon.
Well, I think this is something that has been mooted. I mean, I was talking to somebody earlier who is somewhat to their surprise, kind of eagerly anticipating going back to school after spending kind of the best part of 8 months at home with family.
A lot of kids, strangely, are happy to go back.
And there's this possibility of a kind of a shift system whereby, you either go very early in the morning and you knock off at 2, or you go at 2 and then you don't finish until 6. And, both options seem to have their downsides. One involves getting up very early. One involves not getting home until late.
Well, and there's also the matter of, are teachers supposed to work for 12 hours a day now? Where's the second shift of teachers coming from? I think that's one of the main reasons why it got kind of tabled for now. Maybe some kind of compromised version of it will return. There's also there was also the possibility of half of the kids 1 week, the other half the next, kind of alternating, that kind of thing. It's a mess.
But you have to think of the practicality, because actually I thought that was a very reasonable suggestion. And then you have the practicality actually of arranging timetables.
Sure.
And arranging a timetable for a school in itself is a massive, massive task. And when you're having to basically rewrite it every 7 days, then it's even more of a massive task.
Well, I just remember when I came to high school here in Poland after being in high school in the U.S., I was shocked at how long it took them to figure out a timetable. I mean, we would show up. The teachers didn't know which room to go to. And then a few weeks later, when the semester changed, they actually didn't know either what the situation was then. So the fact that they're disorganized right now is no surprise to me.
Well, fingers crossed for as much of a normal return to school as we can hope for, and hopefully the next 3 or 4 weeks they'll get things ironed out. One more issue on the corona situation. Dr. Mike, the government is moving forward with plans to kind of authorize stores and other private businesses to refuse service to anybody not wearing a mask. Right now, it's kind of encouraged, let's say, lots of like security guards say, please put on a mask. If you want to be a hard ass about it, technically you can just go ahead and walk in the store anyway. I don't think they have a legal basis to kick you out, but the government looking to give stores that right. What's the situation there?
Exactly. What you're saying is that at this moment, there might be a recommendation or law saying that you have to have your nose and mouth covered when you walk into a store. But if you don't, then the store has no legal right to deny you service.
You have a right to be an asshole.
Exactly. So, there might be a police officer there and will stop you and fine you for not covering your mouth. But the store owner or the clerk cannot legally deny you services or not sell you something. So the government is saying, we're going to change the law, at least for this period of time, saying that the clerk, the person working behind the register, will say that, no, I can't not sell you this product because you are not covering your face. You don't have a face mask.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, from a civil liberty point of view, because it kind of butts up against the whole idea of free association and this idea, which admittedly I think is a little bit of a hot topic in other areas, disregarding pandemics, and that is kind of if you don't want someone in your business, pub landlords are free to bar troublesome customers, and I would have thought, speaking as a layperson, that if you have a store and someone comes in and is unwilling to behave in a way that you think is the way that you should behave if you're in your store, then you're not allowed to come in. And that's, irrespective of any legislation, it should be your right as a proprietor. That's a personal view.
Dr. Mike, going forward, speaking of masks in public, do you see this requirement going away anytime soon, or is this just how things are now?
Things is just how things are now, and it's not going to go anytime soon. But speaking to what Josh was saying, right now, there's always been a situation where, for instance, if you walk to a taxi driver and say, "Oh, drive me down the street," then legally that taxi driver can't say no, even though he's going to lose money on that. So right now, this law is saying that, well, the taxi driver could say no because you're not wearing a mask. It's kind of like switching the standards when it comes to kind of driving.
Making a face that says you're not entirely sure about a word you chose, or what?
The thing is, I was actually thinking of something to say when Josh was talking, and then when I started talking, I forgot. Yeah, it escaped my mind.
Well, I think it's also very important to bear in mind. I mean, I think it's probably clear from a lot of what I've contributed to these various kind of discussions over the last few weeks is that I think the threat from this virus, in the most general sense, has been massively overstated. Which is not to say that if you're one of those unfortunate people who does succumb to it, that it's not a very horrible disease indeed. And I do know people who have had it, and it sounds really, really horrible. The point being is that it seems, fortunately, to be only a small minority, a fraction of a percentage of people who are either seriously ill or sadly succumb to it. But just because I have that opinion does not mean that I'm not respectful of the fact that a lot of people take it far more seriously and are very, very worried.
1,800 people dead.
Very, very concerned. And so, as however much I may kind of, privately sneer at the idea of what is all this, blah, blah, blah about masks and, blah, blah, blah. I will nevertheless, if the public guidelines are wear a mask when you go into a shop, I will wear a mask when I go into a shop, blah, 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 because, this is about, it's not just about individual liberty. It's also about being a responsible citizen and,
not
having
being
some,
an asshole.
Yeah, having some concern for your
What's wrong
fellow
with being
citizens.
an asshole? Actually,
It serves a useful function.
What I was trying to say earlier, that in Poland, technically, there are no laws that say prohibit people to taking part in or being customers in a restaurant when that restaurant says, for instance, or bar, that we will not allow customers under the age of 21. In Poland, it's under 18 where they cannot let somebody in, say, for drinking alcohol. But if you go to a bar and says, we're not letting somebody in who's under 21, they have legally no right to do that. Or for a dress code, for instance, we won't let you in because you're not wearing the right kind of shoes or you don't have a tie.
Count on your willingness to comply and not be an asshole.
Exactly. So there are no laws in Poland that say that restaurants or establishments can force you to do that.
Let's move on from coronavirus here. Something that was in the news a lot in last week, big headlines actually, controversial. Poland withdrew from an international convention on gender violence, which led a lot of people to suggest that the current government is somehow promoting violence against women. Guys, what's the starting point for this? Give us an idea of what the international agreement was and Poland's reasons for getting out.
Well, as I understand it, this was a convention which is focused on the idea of outlawing domestic violence, specifically and particularly against women, which I think is something that very few people reasonable people would take issue with. But I think what has happened is that the current Polish government has noticed that in amongst this generally kind of laudable ideal is also stuff that leans a little bit more to kind of promoting ideas that don't sit quite so well with the traditional conservative Catholic values of a substantial sector of the Polish population, including the current government. And it's an interesting one, really, because not so much in terms of the wording, but the way that the reaction to this has been. But because the convention includes things which relate to or could relate to the promotion of LGBTQ blah 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 values, the government is uncomfortable about this, and this is the reason they want to withdraw from the convention. However, the withdrawal from the convention has been interpreted by those in opposition to the government to say this means that effectively the government is endorsing violence against women, and this is further evidence that this government is actively anti-LGBT blah, 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 blah.
Can we agree that nobody is pro violence against women? Can I just throw that out there?
My hands are up.
Come on.
We have to also remember that this convention, the Istanbul Convention, was signed just before the previous elections by Komorowski.
2015.
Exactly. And the whole thought is that this was to get more people on the left to vote for him just before the elections when Duda won 5 years ago. Also, most of the laws within this convention were understandable, beating women bad, domestic violence bad. But what's kind of controversial in this treaty were the concepts of gender and understanding of the social idea of sexuality in the society, where there were no legal terms in Polish law saying that gender is a construct of social a social construct in that sense.
Josh, this reminds me, and tell me if this is a fair comparison. This reminds me of a few years ago when the United States and I think some other countries withdrew from an international climate agreement because, they signed it because everybody's on board for the same thing. We all want these nice things like a clean environment. But once they started reading the details in the fine print, they said, wait a second, there are some things in here that we can't or don't want to do that kind of, don't really match the top level smiley face title we've given this thing that everybody agrees with. So we're going to get out of this. I see some parallels here. Everybody's against violence against women, right? Everybody's against that. But as Mike just detailed, there were some, in the fine print, there are some things that the Polish government said, okay, wait, we're on board with the high level, top level stuff. Okay, fine. But, we read this carefully, and this seems to obligate us to do things we don't want to do. Do you see any parallels with the climate agreement?
Well, no, I think I absolutely do. And I think this is, of course, this is really politics pure and simple, isn't it? I mean, one side is playing the other side and saying, I see what you're really doing here. You're trying to do this. And the other side is like, no. What we're doing here is because we're quite happy to deal with this, the headline issue. But then there's like, in the fine print, as you say, there's like a whole lot of other stuff, which by signing this would mean that kind of under, and I, cough quote, international law, which is rather a nebulous concept, then we could then be on the hook for, failing to provide, insufficient kind of, education and information on topics that we are not so comfortable with. And I think that's a very, very reasonable point, regardless of your standpoint on the issues of, promotion of kind of gender orientation and, decisions on such matters. And, I to be honest, I think that the smart thing that the government should do is say, we're not happy with this treaty as it's worded. We're going to withdraw from it, but before we withdraw from it, we are going to, legislate in a similar way, just purely in the terms of making kind of or strengthening the legislation against instances of domestic violence against women. And I can see that there's kind of room for abuse even within that process. But but the point is, of course, that it doesn't really matter because it's actually a political point that's being made, and it's a political point that's being made by both sides. And this is something that we're going to see.
That's a political game. Sorry, Dr. Mike, go ahead.
Actually, I was about to say that the Prime Minister Morawiecki has basically decided to send this document to the Constitutional Tribunal to see if this treaty was in line with the Polish Constitution to begin with, instead of actually deciding to pull out of it or stay with it either way.
They love to send it upstairs and bury it in legalese and legal analysis and stuff like that.
Well, no, but to be fair, I guess, you kind of like in your country, John, they do it all the time with the Supreme. So like, is this constitutional, and then you've got, half the Supremes, half the Supremes are kind of like, what is it, textualists, and the others are the kind of, what is it, like but if they were writing it today, they would mean this. Yeah, originally. Yeah.
Well, but my take on this Polish thing is that it's the backlash, the reaction from the other side is so predictable and so ridiculous and so hysterical. And I'm not saying only one side is responsible for this kind of reaction, but it just opens the door. When you take an action like this, when you withdraw from a treaty that's supposed to be against domestic violence, what the other side is going to say, even if privately they understand your reasons for doing it. Publicly, when it comes to like retail politics, they're going to spin it as you hate women. And I'm so sick of these politics of, oh, no matter what you do, it's because you hate somebody. You're anti this or anti this. And, we see this very often in America. It happens all the time when it comes to like budgetary things. A party can, let's say one party wants more money for their pet cause. They want to increase it by 10%. But in the end, they only increase it by 5%. So the opposition party can say, see, they've cut spending. Instead of 10% increase, they only increased it by 5%. Whereas the party who's spending more money can go to their constituents and say, we've increased spending. So both parties can spin it for their own constituencies and be telling the truth, right?
I mean, this was a classic case of austerity in the United Kingdom a few years ago, where kind of like the cuts were not actual cuts. They were cuts in the rate of increase.
Exactly. But they're still spending more money than last year, but just not as much as proposed.
Yeah.
But invariably, it's, everything is spun as, oh, you want old people to die in the streets, and oh, you want people to not have medical care, and oh, you hate children, and you hate women. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And I really don't want to see that creeping into Polish politics, but maybe it's inevitable at this point. This is just where we are now. Let's move on to something. Let's move to some local news. Kind of interesting. We've talked about this subject many times. The Conservator. Conservator, if you don't know, is an office. Every Polish city has something like this, especially cities with older buildings like Krakow. Conservator is responsible for preserving the architectural, artistic, cultural heritage
She's like the
of the community. And she has, in the case of Krakow, it's a woman, so she has very, very broad and strong authority, basically veto power over lots and lots of things. If you want to make changes in buildings or any kind of structure that has some kind of, again, architectural or artistic value to the city, or it's designated as some kind of architectural treasure, she has veto power over any plans to change it or alter it in any way. And in this case we're talking about right now, it all applies to the new Hilton hotel that's being built in the center of town on the corner of, what is that, Tomasza and Sławkowska, right upstairs from where the Metropolitan restaurant used to be. Some of you listening will remember.
You remember Metropolitan? They had really good pancakes. I used to go there with my then girlfriend, now wife.
It's just one block off the Rynek. And just walk down Sławkowska, you'll see it. Huge renovation project. Anyway, it's been brought to a halt because the conservator has stepped in and said that the builders, or the contractors, I should say, have kind of deviated from the approved plan. And when you hear that, you kind of interpret it to mean, oh, they've decided to add an extra 3 stories to the building. No. It's nothing like that. When you get permission from the conservator to make changes in these old buildings, they are extremely highly detailed. I mean, every little thing is explained in detail, what you're going to change, what you're going to knock down, any holes you're going to drill in the wall. And what's going on in the Hilton, apparently, from what we can understand from media reports, is that, when you start gutting a building like this, when you get into electrical systems and plumbing systems, drainage systems, ventilation systems, sometimes you don't know what it really looks like until you open up the wall and look at it, right? You have to make a hole to see what's going on. And maybe what you discover matches what's on the architectural plan that was approved by the conservator, and maybe it doesn't. And in the cases where it doesn't, it means that, maybe you have to extend a pipe by another 10 centimeters, or maybe you have to chip away at a piece of the wall you didn't expect to chip away at. And as soon as you start doing that, you're deviating from the approved plan. And as soon as you start deviating, the conservator can move in and say no, and bring the entire thing to a stop. And that's what's going on. So the contractors are not making any massive changes. They're not destroying Krakow's cultural, artistic.
If anything, they
heritage.
Want to preserve it because it sells.
Exactly. They're just trying to turn it into a hotel, and sometimes that means making slight deviations from the approved plan. Conservator, I forgot her name. It's Magdalena something. You remember, Dr. Mike? Magdalena something. Anyway, we've talked about her many times. And
that narrows it down considerably, doesn't it?
She has shown time and time again that she is just a hard ass about this. And if she has a chance between helping a project to move forward and making use out of an abandoned derelict building, or standing in the way and preventing any changes being made, she's going to stand in the way.
I can imagine her in tight leather and a whip, to be honest. I mean, just kind of...
Okay.
I'm a Natrix conservator. All right, quick, somebody jump in with something else.
No, but the thing is, with the Hilton Hotel, they are renovating that building there, and on the other side of that corner as well, they want to put those 2 corners into one hotel.
It covers the whole block, basically.
Because it's also where the
movies used to be.
Yeah.
And the truth is, they'll definitely improve it. And I understand that you want to save the feel of what used to be there, but there's a point where the facade is more than enough. If in the background something's being destroyed, well, too bad. But if you want this to survive 300 years, you have to modernize it.
A modern hotel, again, just the things I mentioned earlier in terms of infrastructure that's buried inside the walls that you don't see and really don't care about. But a modern hotel that has like 100 and something air-conditioned rooms needs, for example, air ducts that probably were not included in the original plans 250
never mind,
years
like
ago.
Fiber optic cables.
Exactly.
And,
all these things have to be buried in the wall somewhere. And again,
ensuite bathrooms.
And again, when they're installing this infrastructure, they don't know 100%. They can't be completely sure what they need to do until they start knocking stuff down. And they might need to make small changes.
To take the other side for a moment, to take the other side on this for a moment is because it's quite likely that the conservator is a hard ass. Because let's face it, property developers do not have the shiniest of reputations when it comes to kind of doing what they're told. And there is a long history, like not just in Poland, but all around the globe, of people not being allowed to do stuff, doing that stuff, and then saying kind of like, hey, too late, it's done. Sue me. Yeah. I mean, I think, I can't, unfortunately, I can't remember the exact story, but I think it was somewhere in the UK and something was demolished that was like a listed building, and they presented it as a fait accompli.
You can't put it back.
And they said, no, you're going to rebuild that and you're going to pay for it. And they did.
Well, still not the same building. I mean, I'm not challenging the need for something like this.
Warsaw. Is there a conservatory in Warsaw? Because there's nothing older than 70 years.
There must be. Well, they pretend that it is older.
75 years. Yeah.
55. Well, the old town was rebuilt in the late 50s, right? Wasn't it? Okay. Anyway, different subject.
Looks worse than the old town here.
I'm not challenging the need for something like the conservatory, but in Krakow, she always seems to come down on the side of no. No, every single time. And again, if you're not familiar with the office of the conservatory, there are certain buildings here in Krakow where, no exaggeration, literally, if you want to hang a picture on the wall and you want to drill a hole in the wall, you need permission to do that, right? And for small cosmetic things like that, probably not a issue in most cases. But when you get into, again, fundamentally renovating a building, when you're installing this massive, for example, the Hilton, you need some flexibility on things that cosmetically don't matter, but functionally are very important. And the conservator always seems to stand in the way and, delay these things. Can you imagine the headache that must be involved in these major, big money renovations of these communities? Be a nightmare, I think.
I'm pretty sure they make sure they have a lot of money ready for bribes.
You mean entertainment for our clients? Yeah, maybe. Well, anyway, we'll see what happens with the Hilton. Yeah. Let's move on to something else. This is a great story. We learned last week, Dr. Mike, that a guy, part of Polonia, I guess you would say, Chicago Polish guy, landed at the airport here in Krakow with a passport from the People's Republic of Poland, also known as the Communist Poland, which last time I checked, disappeared, 30 years ago, something
1989,
like that.
Yes.
But he landed at the airport, presented his PRL passport, had a bit of a problem getting in the country. What's going on here?
Well, the issue is if you are a Polish citizen, you can enter the country even if your ID is expired. I mean, they cannot say no to you at that moment. The problem was that his, ID was expired, and they couldn't check in the systems to see if he was actually a Polish citizen. It was out of date by 30 years. What saved him was that his wife, even though she also had out-of-date passports and IDs, her PESEL ID number was in the system, and they were actually able to find in this civil bureaucratic system that she had married this guy 40 years ago and that proved that he was actually a citizen of Poland, so he was allowed to enter the country.
I got no sympathy for this guy. How do you not notice your passport is 30 years out of date?
Yes, his passport was from 1992. But the funny thing is, the Polish People's Republic, the Communist Republic, ended in 1989, but they were still handing out passports in that form for several years after that. But you have to remember the consulates, they had the blank, passport books for several years after that, and they would just stick in the photo and the ID. and they
using
didn't.
their available inventory.
It does sound like, I mean, I've read a lot of John le Carre and all those kind of associated, and the idea that you could kind of like amble into the Polish consulate in Chicago and kind of like, it's got ski on the end, I don't know, but like, give us a passport. Yeah, sure. Like, so there's my photograph, and like, boom, sign there, and like, just type all that in, and I go, oh, Bob's your uncle, or
or Bobas is your uncle, yeah. But this is basically how that worked. This individual also had an American passport. He was an American citizen, but legally speaking, you cannot cross the border in Poland with a foreign passport if you are a Polish citizen. So if you have American citizenship and you're flying to Poland, but you're also Polish, you have to show your Polish ID or passport as well when you're leaving the country. But when you're entering Poland, if your ID or whatever is expired, they still have to let you into the country.
I wonder if you're then obligated to renew your passport.
Yes, you are. Technically, he immediately was given documentation saying that he has to renew his passport, renew his ID, get into the PESEL, the ID system right away.
I would love to be able to hear that conversation that was held at the passport gate between the passport agent and this guy and his wife.
There might have been a few instances of the K word.
Sorry, sir, do you know your passport's out of date? What? I just imagine him. I don't know why. I just kind of... Anybody who doesn't realize their passport is 30 years old does not deserve the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this. I just imagine him as maybe not the brightest guy.
Come on. What happened was that he had a valid US passport. He left the US with that. He was kind of canny enough to realize that he probably needed to take his old out-of-date Polish passport with him. He had probably advice from his, local neighborhood Barteks and Janusz's that kind of like, yeah, man, okay, it's out of date, but, it's just kind of like, blah, blah, blah. So he pitches up at the gate and he thinks, I've got a valid US passport. I'm a living person. I've kind of, I have documentation. So the Polish passport is out of date. So I
wonder if he'd shown his American passport, if any flags would have been raised, if, the system would have known anything.
They might have asked him if he was Polish or not, and if he said yes, they would have said like, "Well,"
because look, people with Polish names show up at Polish airports every day with American passports, Canadian passports, and German passports,
Kowalskis,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the point
people who are not
is that he would not
legally
even have,
Polish.
unless he knew that he needed a Polish passport to get into Poland. What reason would he have even brought his Polish passport with him?
Yeah.
If he just played dumb and pretended that he was an American citizen only.
I wonder if this was his first trip here in all that time, maybe.
Well, it kind of sounds like, or at least in
30
years.
Otherwise, it would have been mentioned in the news. But then again...
Yeah, things are different now, huh? Last thing we want to mention, a little interesting tidbit. We might be welcoming Tom Cruise, not here to our studio, but somewhere in the country, a small town.
I'd have to get a new couch.
We'd have to clean up a little bit. We'd have to clean up a little bit. Forgot the name of the place. Small town somewhere in Poland has an old, disused, I understand, rail bridge that would make the perfect prop to blow up in the next Mission Impossible movie. The plan was
seventh one.
I like Mission Impossible. The first two are stupid, but since then they're pretty good. Anyway. And that was the plan, but now apparently there's a growing movement to save our bridge, Dr. Mike.
Yes, there was a bridge in the middle of nowhere that nobody actually knew about until somebody said...
It's structurally unsound, I think, and has been decommissioned.
Yes. Hasn't been used for decades.
Yeah. Perfect to blow up.
And a movie crew realized that, hey, this looks great as a backdrop. Let's blow it up. It'll look fantastic in an action scene, 3D, 4K, whatever. And then all of a sudden the locals realize, no, we don't want you to do that because reasons. And, well, it's been registered as a national monument, so the movie crew can no longer blow it up.
Wait, after people found out about the plan to blow it up, then it was made into a national monument?
They basically then lodged the paperwork, and even though it hasn't been registered legally yet, once it's in the process, it can no longer be blown up. And the movie crew, the producers said, like, we didn't want to blow up the whole thing. We just want to blow up a small part of it, like special effects, and we would have renovated the rest of it so it could have actually been used as a train bridge. So it would actually been a feasible part of the local infrastructure.
Come out ahead with a better bridge.
be one of the most ludicrous kind of like examples of kind of like, oh, but no, you can't do that because it's an outrage and like nasty Hollywood money, blah 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 blah. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. The bridge. I mean, even the articles that seemingly in support of, the Bridge Preservation Society, they've shown kind of pictures of the bridge in its heyday. The landscape underneath the bridge is utterly different. Kind of like there was like loads and loads of water there in the past. Now it's kind of a green valley. It's a disused railway line. It is, it's an ex-bridge. It's a bridge that has almost ceased to be. It's
pining for the fjords.
Yeah. And then kind of like Hollywood come along and say kind of like, that's a fantastic bridge. It's no use to anybody. We're going to blow it up. And what's more, we'll even fix it for you afterwards. It's a win-win scenario.
I think this is something that in a pre-Facebook age, this happens without a problem. Hollywood says, can we blow it up? Local people say, yeah, sure, why not? Give us some money for this or that. But this is the perfect thing for people who never been to this place, never seen the bridge, don't give a shit about it, to kind of share a Save Our Bridge campaign to make them look like they care.
Yeah, maybe if it was on Schindler's List, it would have been kind of worth preserving.
I don't think so. No, yeah. not at all. So
we all agree. Lists, didn't he?
We all agree. Blow up the bridge.
Yeah, fuck it.
Let's get Tom Cruise here.
Oh yeah, let's get Scientological on there.
Yeah, I was looking for some mention of him. I think this is one of the situations where what do they call it? The second unit, where they film like stuff, without the main cast, right? This is probably a situation where Tom Cruise is not really involved, nor any of the main actors involved.
Cutaway to shots of him in the cockpit of a helicopter, safe in Hollywood.
He'll be kind of digitally, added to the scene.
Yeah.
But I'll keep an eye on the situation. I'm curious to see now. I'm very much pro blow it up now, and I'm curious to see who gets their way. Dr. Mike, final words on the bridge.
Any loud explosions, I'm always interested in that.
I don't know how to continue from that. Well,
there's a town in the middle. No, never mind.
Well, I think we'll stop before we get even sillier. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's the news this week. Thanks for listening. Once again, please share, comment, like, subscribe, follow, help feed that big algorithm in the sky. Help us out. We appreciate it. And we'll catch you next time on the news.